Herbert, I've heard that you only train 10% of what your competitors train. Is that true?
Yes.
Yeah? How do you pull that off? What do you do?
Well, the reason was I had to, because I had a main job and it allowed very little time to train. So therefore, I had to find ways how to train more efficient and in less time more.
Yeah. But what do you do specifically that your competitors don't do? That they take longer for them to train? What is it that you do?
I think the main thing is analyzing and training each separate link.
Okay.
For example, the muscles in the gym, endurance on the bike, the breath hold on the couch or in the plane in the pastime.
And then you put it all together.
And then you put it all together for the dive. We just do the equalization, of course, practice in the water, mainly, not only, but mainly, but also many times to very shallow depths without air, exhaling, so to simulate a greater depth. So therefore, I can do like 30 dives in one session, whereas you can only do 1 or 2 in deep dives in one session.
Okay.
So training a lot more often in a short amount of time, and therefore a lot more efficient.
It's more efficient. What is the most valuable skill to have to excel in freedive? In freediving, the most valuable skill, the one that trumps the others.
I think in many regards, not only freediving, is self-reflection.
Self-reflection.
That you know what the weakest link is, and that you work on that. It's easy to say, but most people like to do something they're good at. And like in freediving, we take people like to feel good and do something they can do good, but not to do something, to practice something that they're very bad at. And this is the key.
So for people that might not be familiar with freediving, can you describe how one of those very deep dives look like? How do you prepare? How do you go down? How's it like?
I have a hard time to find out where to start. Because, where does the dive start? Does it start in training? Does it start in preparation? Does it start with the food before?
I mean, the very day that you are going to attempt one of those very deep dives, like how does it look like? When you're ready, you are almost going down. What do you do?
It also depends on what discipline, of course. If you think about constant weight, swimming down with fins, the main competition discipline, we have most competitions in, is, I would get up and do some breath holds on the couch, maybe do some stretching of the diaphragm, eat nothing before. Even if the dive is in the afternoon, I wouldn't eat at all. Just drink maybe some lemon juice, because that keeps the body alkalic and therefore causes less urge to breathe. And then try not to get your body going too much in metabolism. Don't do any exercise. Try to stay as calm and peaceful as you can. And while going there to the dive location itself, I do some stretching while going there or being there, but stretching mainly the diaphragm. It's not the whole body. It's just maybe a little bit the muscles I would use, the thighs and so on. But the main thing is about stretching the diaphragm. Because the problem is that once you go down, the pressure gets bigger, of course, and then it's hard. The most limiting factor is getting the air out of your lungs to equalize with. So therefore, you need to be able to compress the lungs as much as possible to get most air out to equalize with. And therefore, you need a very flexible diaphragm, and also not to get internal bleeding in the lungs of the vacuum building up when going deep.
Where did you take your mind when you're going down, whatever discipline, no limits or whatever other discipline? Where do you take your mind? What do you think when you're going down?
I try to concentrate on what is at the moment essential and nothing else. So there's no room for any thoughts except this dive. So anything else, what you usually drag around you, which all kinds of other thoughts about, I don't know, your girlfriend, money issues, other conflicts. No, when I dive, there's nothing else but the dive.
You're a former pilot, which is the checklist quintessential profession. Has that background helped you in any way?
In the beginning, I didn't know, I didn't realize, but thinking about and going into it, yes, it did. Because it more or less formed me in the way that you always think of A, B, C, always a backup plan. Okay. And this is in aviation, that's crucial, essential, that you always think of a contingency plan, always. And the same I did on diving, even though I thought that's a normal way, everybody does. And I found it more and more that not everybody does.
That makes a difference to have a backup plan.
It helps.
Yeah. Some years back, you suffered a severe episode of decompression sickness. I'm interested to know not only why and how it happened, but maybe you can go through it briefly, but I'm more interested to know how you managed your recovery. What the doctor said, what you actually did, how was the process of recovering from that episode?
Well, initially I was very dependent on the doctors and the whole infrastructure with it, because I was very, very far gone with the brain and the body. But then I realized when coming back, initially, like only a little bit, I realized more and more that I need to take matters in my own hand, not follow the standard procedures, how to do rehabilitation, just trying to get back on your own. And this was, in the beginning, I thought, okay, that's good. And then I was like, that must be good. And then I tried to convince the doctors. Of course, the doctors didn't want to hear that. And then I gave up trying to convince the doctors quite quickly, and I did my own thing anyway and made them believe I followed their routines initially, and then I just finally quit.
Totally. And you did your
thing. Against their will, because they wanted me to stay there, to continue with the rehab. And everybody wanted me to stay there and to continue. And at the moment I thought, well, if everybody thinks that I should do that, maybe they're right. So I was doubting myself a bit. But then I thought, no, stubborn as I am, I've always been stubborn in my competitions to do my thing. And I thought I'll do it anyway. And then looking back, this was the best decision ever.
Wow. I understand they must be two different sources of enjoyment, but what gives you more overall satisfaction when you attempt one of those very deep dives, or when you just dive for fun in shallow waters in your everyday enjoyment?
Well, I think it's two different things. Yeah. Well, competition for me was always only a very, very small part of my freediving anyway. So enjoying just the marine life, interacting, if it's diving on an ordinary reef, a shipwreck, a case, or whatever, turtles, whales, dolphins, sharks, or you name it. And I think this is nice to experience, to be part of, integrated, but also it is like when you see all those things, the vision is of course that you see all those things. Whereas if you do competition, the vision is purely inside. So you focus and the vision goes inside to check that everything is all right and nothing is outside.
It's more about introversion, right?
Yeah.
Mm. How do you assess risk when you do those dives? Do you get to the point of actually like quantifying the probability of something going wrong? Do you, like, for example, there is an X probability of something going wrong, but do you quantify? Do you get to this point of in your head having a number?
Well,
not that
number. It's hard to give numbers to risk.
I know. It's just a statistical probability.
But yes, of course,
yeah.
I take in consideration how likely some risk is going to happen, really.
Yeah.
And you not taking any risk is impossible, because even if we just walk outside the street, well, we hit a lightning or a stone falling from a roof or something, or even worse, a car accident, which happens, I don't know, I think 1.2 million a year.
Wow.
Diving, of course, there are other risks. And from the outside, yes, it looks like it is a big risk. But when you know what you're doing and you do everything to minimize those risks, it's not dangerous at all.
Mm. Do you ever have fear when you are about to go down? Or if
there's no place for that.
You don't?
You can, because once there's fear or any form of anxiety, even a little bit is impossible, because you have to be absolutely relaxed to be able to perform to maximum. Because any anxiety, adrenaline causes to use more oxygen, and therefore you can't go.
No place for fear in freediving.
So, of course, in training there is place for doubt, there is place even for fear. In the very, very beginning. Not fear, I wouldn't call it fear, I would call it more discomfort. But that's the challenge to overcome.
How do you overcome that when it appears? How do you manage that funk when you start feeling that fear might be knocking on the door? What do you do to dissipate that?
Well, you try to push to overcome your comfort zone. For example, when I trained in the past days, I trained in the lakes, which were damn cold, bad visibility, very dark, a very spooky environment. And I found it's always a lot more difficult to adapt to get comfortable in lakes than the sea. So in the lake, it took me a week to get comfortable. In the sea, it almost takes me 2 days. But in the lake, it's like you go down, it's spooky, it's dark, it's cold. But then you try, I can do it anyway, and then slowly but surely you increase whatever, and then you start, maybe it's not that bad, and next maybe it's good. It is good, and then you start to feel comfortable with the spook environment, and this challenge to overcome that you actually find the whole stuff not spooky but more mythical. Nice. And this is slowly but sure a way to overcome. I think many people have like fears that they accepting not to overcome. Like it's almost like I'm claustrophobic, so I can't handle it. I'm fear of heights, I can't handle it. But if people would just try a little more, they would easily overcome most of the fears.
And go to the other side of fear. What are the biggest, Herbert, mistakes that beginners make when they approach freediving? Something that you see over and over again beginners do, would you say? Like not necessarily, I don't mean like in a technical side, I mean like the way they approach freediving. Well,
I see that actually quite often in the beginning that people are way too excited. It sounds very simple, but also using your muscles, your body, more than they would need to. For example, if you are in the open sea, you hold a rope and you try to counteract the waves that put your body position off. If you are a freediver, you just hold on and go with the waves. But if you're not, you just, if you look at people underneath the surface, you will right away see who's a beginner and who is not.
Interesting.
And when the reason how to become good very quickly is to be calm. Because it's not about taking in more oxygen, it's about using less.
Interesting.
And how to use less? Being efficient, not to move any muscle unnecessarily.
What advice would you give to that younger diver that wants to make a name for himself in the freediving world? A young diver that wants to do well in freediving. What advice would you give to these people?
It's, even though I didn't go this route, I think it's very good to make a course in freediving, that you don't make mistakes that are unnecessary, that prolong your success rate. I mean, that you learn like a little bit the path where to go, how to increase your performance. But at the same time, there's not one path. There's then you soon have to find your own way too. And then it's not like following someone is not going to give you a maximum performance. Following two is probably better, but just trying to get the best out of both or even more. But in the beginning, as I said, I think it's easier and quicker to learn from somebody than trying to experience all by yourself in the very beginning. But then it's also very important to listen to your own body. And this is, I think, the major culprit. Most people, that they can't listen to their own body.
Lack of self-awareness.
Yeah.
What divers do you admire, from present times or from the past?
Well, I met Umberto Belisario in Martinique. He's a great guy. I met him now and then here and over there. And we had great conversations. So it's not only that I would admire a diver because of his diving skills only, but I would maybe like a person more for the whole package, not just the diving side of it. So other divers, I know better, some worse, some not as good. And like Intermerker, I met, he briefly died, who did a big milestone in freediving. Also, the doctors told him not to dive. He will die diving deeper than 50 meters. Well, look at it now.
Yeah.
A bit different.
What is the best decision not to do something that you have ever made? It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be necessarily about freediving. It can be anything in life. The best decision not to do anything.
My best decision was not to stay in the rehab center. And this was also a very difficult decision for me, but it was the best one.
What are you most proud of that most people don't know about?
I can tell.
I understand. And what are you most grateful for in recent years?
Sorry?
What are you most grateful for? Something that you feel thankful.
Yeah. Well, of course, coming back after the accident, the rehab, initially the predictions from the doctors' prognosis were not good at all.
No.
And luckily I succeeded all of them. And it's good to be able to walk again.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And the very last question, Herbert. if you could have a short conversation with your 20-year-old self, what would you tell you? What advice would you give to the 20-year-old Herbert?
Buy some stocks from Apple.
Apart from that?
No.
Nothing comes to mind?
I think I wouldn't necessarily make anything different. Yes, because of course you have some doubts of where to go when you're young, education or whatever. And but in the end,
everything went out fine.
Everything went out fine, yeah.
Herbert, thank you very much.
It's
been a great pleasure. And take care down there. See you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you next time.